What would you do if someone told you that your dreams were impossible, that the very thing that makes you different makes you unworthy? Leo Griffin stands at the edge of the studio, watching the other dancers stretch and laugh, their reflections multiplying across mirrored walls. 18 years old, deaf since birth, he feels the vibrations of the music through the wooden floor, the bass notes traveling up through his bones. The Westlake Dance Academy doesn't accept just anyone. Its graduates perform on stages worldwide. And Leo has earned his spot through years of discipline, even if the others don't believe he belongs. Miss Castro, the ballet director, claps her hands, signaling the beginning of rehearsal. Leo reads her lips as she announces spring showcase auditions start next week. A new choreographer is coming, the legendary Sylvester Stallone, former principal. Dancer with the New York Ballet now, directing the most elite company in the country. Leo's heart races. This is his chance. The opportunity to prove himself, to show that dance transcends all barriers. His mother drops him off each morning at 5 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else arrives, so he can practice alone, without the stares, without the whispers. She'd signed him up for dance when he was 6, not as therapy, not as some misguided attempt to fix him, but because she saw how he moved to vibrations others couldn't feel. The school bell rings, marking the end of morning practice. Leo's focus shifts to academic classes, where he sits with an interpreter, taking notes while watching teacher's lips. Lunch period. The cafeteria buzzes with noise Leo cannot hear. He sits alone, reviewing choreography in his mind until a shadow falls across his notebook. William Black, captain of the dance team. 6 feet of graceful arrogance, surrounded by his usual entourage looking down at Leo with practiced disdain. William's lips move slowly, deliberately, making sure Leo can read every word. They'll never let a deaf boy dance the lead. You're just the diversity admission. Leo doesn't respond, just returns to his notebook, his pencil sketching dance positions with mathematical precision. Later, in afternoon rehearsal, the dancers pair off for lifts. Leo stands alone until Miss Castro reluctantly pairs him with Mila Nash, the newest member of the company. Mila doesn't look at him with pity or with the discomfort others can't hide. She simply takes her position and trusts him to lift her. Her trust surprises him. The weight of her in his arms feels right. Together they create something beautiful until William accidentally bumps into them. Mila falls not badly, but enough to disrupt the flow, enough to make the others laugh. Miss Castro sighs, frustration evident in her expression. She doesn't reprimand William instead. She moves Leo to practice alone in the corner. That night, Leo watches videos of Sylvester Stallone, the way he commands the stage, how he tells stories without words through the pure language of movement. If Stallone could see him dance, really see him without prejudice, would he understand what Leo is trying to say? The next morning, Leo arrives at his usual time, the studio empty and waiting. But something is different. The janitor, Henry Hayes, is there, mopping the floor in smooth, rhythmic motions. He nods at Leo, a simple acknowledgement, and continues his work. Leo sets down his bag, removes his street shoes, and places his worn dance shoes carefully on the floor when a note slides under the studio door. Auditions changed to tomorrow. Special request from Stallone himself. He wants to see everyone early because he has somewhere else to be. Leo's stomach tightens. He's not ready. Not yet, but there's no changing it now. One day to prepare. One chance. To show what he can do, one moment that could change everything, or confirm what William and the others believe. What would you do if your dream was just out of reach and the world was determined to remind you of all the reasons you might fail? Leo sits on the bus, clutching his dance bag, the morning darkness pressing against the windows as the city slowly wakes. Today, everything changes. Stallone arrives, auditions begin, and Leo's dream hangs in the balance. His phone buzzes with a text from Mom. Good luck today. Remember why you dance. He traces his thumb over the words, drawing strength from her unwavering belief. The studio lights are already on when he arrives, earlier than usual, but not early enough to be alone. William and his friends have claimed the space. They don't notice Leo at first, standing in the doorway, watching them practice their audition pieces, fluid movements cutting through air. William executes a perfect grand jeté, landing without sound. His friends applaud, their faces bright with admiration. Then Lucas Morris spots Leo nudges William. The group falls silent before whispers ripple between them. Leo walks to the far corner, keeps his eyes down, sets his bag on the bench, begins his warm-up routine. William approaches his shadow, falling across Leo's feet, speaking with exaggerated mouth movements as if volume would help Leo understand. You should save yourself the embarrassment. Stallone won't waste his time with a deaf dancer. What are you going to do? Feel the music? Leo continues stretching, letting the words wash over him, not because they don't hurt, but because showing pain gives William power. The studio door opens. Miss Castro enters with Mila, both carrying coffee cups, steam rising like morning fog. Miss Castro's gaze sweeps the room, noting the division. The cluster of dancers around William Leo isolated in his corner. She claps her hands, calls everyone to the bar, begins the morning exercises, her face betraying nothing. Leo takes position at the end, watching her reflection in the mirror, reading her instructions from her lips, keeping time by watching the other dancers. When the piano starts, Leo places his hand against the wall, feeling the vibrations, translating them into movement. During water break, Leo checks his phone. No update from Stallone, no change to the schedule. The minutes tick by. Morning rehearsal becomes afternoon practice. Still no sign of the famous choreographer, tension building with each passing hour. At 3:00, Miss Castro receives a call. Her expression shifts from anticipation to disappointment as she hangs up and faces the waiting dancers. Stallone's flight was delayed, auditions postponed until tomorrow. Everyone is dismissed early, except the competition team for extra rehearsal. The competition team, led by William, which does not include Leo, despite his technical proficiency. Leo packs his bag, heading for the door. When Miss Castro calls his name, asks him to stay. You've been working on something. I've seen you here early mornings. Show me what you've prepared for the audition. Leo hesitates, not ready to reveal his piece. Not to her. Not when she's done nothing to stop William's cruelty. But this is his chance to show someone in authority what he can do before Stallone arrives. He sets down his bag, removes his sweatshirt, takes position in the center of the room, and nods that he's ready. Miss Castro starts the music. Though Leo can't hear it, he counts in his head, feeling the vibrations through the floor. The piece begins. Slowly controlled movements showing technical precision, but as he continues, something shifts. Leo closes his eyes, dancing not to music he can't hear, but to something inside him, raw emotion translated into movement. When he finishes, Miss Castro's expression is unreadable. She makes a few notes in her book, thanks him without meeting his eyes. On his way out, Leo passes the trophy case in the hallway, decades of dance excellence, captured in gold and silver names and faces of those who came before. One photo catches his eye from 20 years earlier, a young male dancer in mid-leap, something familiar in his posture. The nameplate reads, Sylvester Stallone, Junior Division Champion. Before Leo can look closer, Henry the janitor appears beside him, taps the glass case gently, and smiles. In Henry's other hand, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, which he quickly tucks into his pocket. Leo nods goodbye, pushes through the double doors into the fading afternoon light, unaware of Henry watching him go. At home that night, Leo searches online for more information about Stallone, finding videos of his performances, articles about his meteoric rise. Nothing mentions any connection to Westlake Academy. No photos match the one in the trophy case, as if that part of history has been erased. Leo's phone buzzes with a text from a number he doesn't recognize. Just 3 words, "Don't give up." He stares at the message, wondering who sent it, what they know and why they care. Morning comes too quickly. Leo boards the empty bus, his reflection pale in the window. Today, Stallone arrives. What does it feel like when your entire future hangs on a single performance before someone who might not see you at all? The studio buzzes. With nervous energy, dancers stretching, whispering, stealing glances at the door. Leo finds a spot near the window, away from the others, warming up methodically, controlling his breathing. William holds court in the center, demonstrating a complex sequence, his followers watching adoringly, as if proximity to his talent might elevate their own. Miss Castro enters precisely at 9, followed by a man in a black turtleneck, tall, muscular, with intense eyes. Sylvester Stallone has arrived. The room falls silent. All movement ceases as Stallone surveys the dancers, his gaze lingering on each face. When he reaches Leo, there's a flicker of something: recognition, curiosity. Gone before Leo can interpret it, Miss Castro introduces Stallone, her lips moving too quickly for Leo to follow, excitement making her words blur together until Stallone raises his hand. He steps forward, begins to speak slowly, deliberately, as if he knows Leo is watching his lips. "I'm looking for dancers who can tell stories, who understand that movement is language, who can speak to an audience without saying a word." Leo's heart pounds against his ribs. This is what he's always believed, what he's tried to explain when others questioned how a deaf boy could dance. Stallone continues. Auditions will happen one by one, each dancer performing for 2 minutes. No music, just pure movement. No music, a level playing field. Leo can hardly believe it. This changes everything. Miss Castro looks uncomfortable. This wasn't the plan. She tries to interject, but Stallone has already moved on. Numbers are drawn. The order determined. Leo will be last, number 23. The auditions begin, each dancer taking center stage, moving in silence, watched by Stallone's unflinching gaze. Some try to impress with technical difficulty. Others focus on emotional expression. William performs with confident precision, Stallone's face revealing nothing. Between performances, Leo notices Henry in the doorway, mop in hand, supposedly cleaning. But his eyes never leave Stallone. Hours pass. The tension grows. Dancers who finished huddle together, analyzing every twitch of Stallone's expression. When number 22 finishes, Leo steps forward, takes his position, centers himself in the silence he knows so well. Before he can begin, William whispers loudly to his friends, "Why are we even pretending this is fair?" He can't hear music. He can't be a real dancer. Stallone's head turns sharply, his eyes narrow at William, who doesn't notice, too busy soaking in his friend's laughter. Miss Castro does nothing, her silence a tacit approval, as always, leaving Leo exposed and alone. Leo begins his piece, the same one he showed Miss Castro, but deeper now, more honest. His movements tell the story of isolation, of communication barriers, of a world that expects him to adapt but won't meet him halfway. Halfway through, he notices Stallone leaning forward, watching intently, something like recognition in his eyes. When Leo finishes, the room remains silent. No applause, no reaction, just the weight of judgment. Stallone stands. "Thanks everyone for their time. Announces results will be posted tomorrow." Exits without further comment. As dancers gather their things, Miss Castro calls William to her office. A brief, private meeting before they emerge, both smiling. The list is already decided. Leo can see it in their faces. The unfairness of it, crushing yet familiar. Another door closing before he could truly enter. On his way out, Leo passes Henry again, who hands him a folded note, then continues mopping as if nothing happened. Outside the building, Leo opens the note. 2 lines in careful handwriting. Meet me at the old practice room. 8 p.m. tonight. There's something you should know. At home, Leo's mother notices his silence, even quieter than usual, his hands still when normally they'd be moving. What happened at the audition? His hands form the signs. Slowly, heavily. They already decided before they saw me dance. It was never going to be fair. She sits beside him, takes his hands in hers. Remember when you first started dancing? It wasn't about performances or approval. Leo nods, remembering the pure joy of movement, before expectations, before judgment. You danced because it was how you spoke when words failed, when signs weren't enough. Your body had stories to tell. At 7:45, Leo returns to the academy. The building mostly dark, except for security lights and a glow from the old practice room. He hesitates at the entrance, unsure what awaits him, who sent the note and why tonight, of all nights. The door creaks open. Leo steps inside, finding Henry, waiting with a photo album open on his lap. What nobody knows, what nobody sees, is that sometimes the most important stories are told in silence. The old practice room smells of dust and memory, smaller than the main studio, its mirrors clouded with age, floor worn by countless dancers before Leo. Henry gestures to the chair opposite him. The photo album open between them, pages, yellowed images from another era. Leo sits cautiously, wondering why the janitor has called him here, what these old photos could possibly mean to his future at the academy. Henry's hands move suddenly, forming familiar shapes in the air, sign language fluid and natural as breathing. I've been watching you dance. When you think no one sees you, you remind me of someone important. Leo's surprise must show on his face. Henry smiles, continues signing, yes, I'm deaf too, have been for 30 years. He turns the album toward Leo, points to a group photo, young dancers in 1990s attire, arms around each other, laughing. Henry taps one face in particular, a teenage boy with intense eyes, standing slightly apart from the others, yet unmistakably the center of the photo. Sylvester Stallone. When he was your age, before he became famous, when he danced at Westlake. Leo stares at the photo, confusion evident. This contradicts everything he's read about Stallone's background. Henry nods, understanding the unasked question, his hands forming words that shift Leo's reality. Stallone wasn't born hearing, he lost his hearing at 12. Leo's hands tremble as he signs back, that's impossible. He's famous, everyone knows his story. Henry turns more pages, shows more photos. Stallone at competitions, trophies in hand, always slightly isolated. He trained here for 3 years. Miss Castro was just starting as an instructor. She worked with him daily, helped him hide his disability. Leo shakes his head. If Stallone is deaf, why would he hide it? Why perpetuate the myth that deaf people can't dance? Henry's expression darkens, his signs becoming sharper, more defined. He didn't choose to hide it. The choice was made for him. The dance world wasn't ready for a deaf principal dancer. His managers, his publicity team, they buried that part of his story. Leo thinks of the auditions, how Stallone watched him, that moment of recognition suddenly making sense. But if this is true, why hasn't he said anything? Why let the discrimination continue when he could change everything? Henry sighs. Some people spend so long hiding, they forget who they really are. The mask becomes the man. Leo stands, paces the small room, his mind racing with implications, what this means for tomorrow's results. Will Stallone choose him now? out of some sense of shared experience, or will he maintain the charade, proving William right after all? Henry closes the album, watches Leo struggle with this new information, then signs something unexpected. It's not about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself. Before Leo can respond, the door opens. Miss Castro stands in the threshold, her expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. "What are you doing here?" The building is closed. Students aren't allowed after hours, especially not in restricted areas. Leo freezes, but Henry stands calmly, tucks the album under his arm, signs nothing as Miss Castro's gaze moves between them, just showing him some history, nothing to worry about. The boy was interested in the academy's past. No harm in that. Miss Castro's eyes narrow. She clearly doesn't believe him, but has no reason to challenge the explanation, so she steps aside, gesturing for Leo to leave. As Leo passes her, she speaks deliberately, making sure he can read her lips. "Results are posted. Don't get your hopes up." In the hallway, Leo pauses by the notice board, where a single sheet of paper lists the dancers selected for the spring showcase. His eyes scan the names William Black, male lead names of William's friends in supporting roles, and at the bottom, almost an afterthought, Leo Griffin, understudy, not rejected, but not accepted either. Placed in limbo, where he can be ignored until needed. On the way out, Leo passes the trophy case again, Stallone's photo watching him, their shared secret now a weight on Leo's shoulders. Outside, the night air cool against his skin, Leo texts his mother, "Coming home late. Need to walk, need to think." The empty streets welcome him as he moves through the darkness, his body speaking the language his voice never could. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and if you've ever had a secret that changed how you saw someone. What happens when the story you've told yourself about why you can't succeed suddenly unravels, revealing a new path forward? Morning rehearsals begin with ruthless efficiency, the chosen dancers forming a tight circle around Miss Castro, while Leo and the other understudies watch from the periphery, taking notes, learning patterns they may never perform. William revels in his position, moving with the confidence of the chosen, smirking whenever Leo catches his eye, as if to say, "This is how it was always going to be." Stallone doesn't attend the first rehearsal, sending notes instead, detailed observations, and changes that Miss Castro implements without question. Leo notices something odd. The notes seem particularly concerned with spacing, with the dancers' positions relative to each other, with sightlines and visual cues. When Leo points this out to Mila during water break, she shrugs, unconcerned. That's just how choreographers work. But Leo knows better. These aren't aesthetic choices, they're adaptations, the kind you make when you can't hear the music. For 3 days, the pattern continues. Stallone absent, his presence felt only through detailed notes. Leo watches from the sidelines, learning both his understudy role and the lead part just in case. On the 4th day, Stallone finally returns, standing silently at the back of the studio, watching the dancers with critical eyes. Miss Castro calls for a run-through. The piano begins, dancers take their positions, William at the center, commanding attention. Leo sits cross-legged against the wall, feeling the music's vibrations, watching William execute the choreography with technical precision but little emotion. Stallone's gaze shifts between the dancers, his expression unreadable until it lands on Leo, sitting alone, silently counting beats. After the run-through, Stallone approaches Miss Castro. They speak quietly in the corner, her face tightening with each word. She claps for attention, announces a change to the schedule. Individual coaching sessions this afternoon, starting with William. While the others take lunch break, Leo remains in the studio, practicing in the corner, using the mirror to refine his movements. He doesn't notice at first Stallone watching from the doorway until their eyes meet in the reflection, and something passes between them. Stallone enters, closes the door, stands beside Leo. Their reflections side by side in the mirror. You understand something, the others don't. Stallone speaks slowly, clearly, his lips easy to read, his eyes never leaving Leo's. Leo nods, not trusting himself to speak, the question burning in his mind, but fear keeping it locked inside. Stallone continues. Dance isn't about hearing the music, it's about feeling the story, telling it through your body when words fail. Leo takes a risk, forms his hands into signs, simple ones that even non-signers might recognize, asking the question directly. Stallone's hands remain at his sides, his eyes register understanding, but he doesn't sign back, doesn't acknowledge what Leo is asking. Instead, he reaches into his pocket, removes a small object, places it on the bench between them, a hearing aid, old-fashioned and worn. My first one, from when I was 13, when they told me I'd never dance again, when I decided to prove them wrong. Leo stares at the small device, understanding its significance. The physical embodiment of a hidden history, a legacy object connecting them across time. Stallone continues speaking, his lips forming words with careful precision. I watched your audition, saw myself 30 years ago. Leo waits for acknowledgement, for Stallone to say it directly, to admit their shared experience. But Stallone only places his hand on Leo's shoulder, squeezes once, then picks up the hearing aid and returns it to his pocket. Our stories are our own to tell when we're ready, if we're ever ready. No one can force that door open. He turns to leave, pauses at the threshold. One last comment thrown over his shoulder. The showcase needs something the audience hasn't seen before. After he's gone, Leo stands motionless, processing what just happened, what was and wasn't said. That afternoon, William emerges from his coaching session, face flushed with anger, eyes finding Leo immediately. He changed everything, all the choreography. Said my interpretation lacked authenticity, that I was dancing for applause, not truth. The other dancers murmur in surprise. Miss Castro looks strained, as if torn between loyalties, her authority subtly undermined. One by one, the dancers receive similar feedback, adjustments to their performances, pushing them toward honesty over flash. When it's Leo's turn, Stallone doesn't critique his dancing. Instead, he asks a single question. What story are you trying to tell? Leo considers carefully, then signs his answer, watching to see if Stallone understands without needing translation. About being in a world that wasn't built for you, about finding your voice when no one is listening, about dancing, not despite being deaf, but because of how I experience the world. Stallone nods once, turns to Miss Castro, speaks words that change everything. I want him to create a new piece for the showcase finale. Miss Castro protests immediately. We already have the program set. The understudy can't suddenly have a featured solo. It's unprecedented. Stallone's response is calm but firm. Art should be unprecedented, should challenge expectations, should make us uncomfortable. As Leo leaves the studio that evening, he spots Henry in the hallway. The janitor's knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement of change in motion. In Leo's bag, a folded piece of paper, Stallone's private number, and a note. Some stories can only be told by those who've lived them. That night, Leo can't sleep, his mind racing with possibilities, with the chance to finally speak his truth. What happens when someone who understands your struggle finally gives you the stage you've been fighting for all along, 2 weeks before? The showcase tension fills the studio like smoke dancers divided into factions, the traditional order disrupted. William leads the resistance. Small acts of sabotage against Leo equipment moved. Practice times changed without notice. Miss Castro watches from the sidelines, her authority diminished by Stallone's decisions, her loyalties clearly with William, though she maintains a veneer of professionalism. Leo works on his solo piece, hours spent in the old practice room, away from critical eyes, pouring his experience into movement. Stallone visits occasionally, offering guidance, but mostly watching, letting Leo find his own voice. The hearing aid appears, again during one session, placed on the piano while they work, neither of them mentioning it, its presence enough to acknowledge their connection. As the showcase approaches, Miss Castro announces a preview performance for faculty and students only, a dress rehearsal with high stakes. The dancers prepare nervously, costumes fitted, technical elements, tested program, printed with Leo's solo listed last. William corners Leo in the changing room. No teachers present, no witnesses except his friends, his words precise and cutting. You think you're special, getting a solo you didn't earn, but everyone knows it's just pity, the deaf charity case. Leo ignores. Him continues changing into his costume eyes, focused on his own reflection, not giving William the reaction he wants. This only angers William more. He steps closer, invading Leo's space, voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I know about Stallone. Henry showed me the pictures, the great dancer's shameful secret, how he hid being damaged to become successful. Leo freezes. Realizing the photo album has been shared, the private history exposed and weaponized against them both. William smiles, seeing his advantage. Everyone will know before the showcase how he lied to the world and how you're trying to use his guilt for your benefit. Leo turns, finally faces. William directly, hands remaining at his sides, voice rarely used. Now forming words, this isn't about me or Stallone. It's about you being afraid that talent isn't enough when you have nothing real to say. William's face flushes with rage. He knocks Leo's costume to the floor, stomps on it deliberately before walking out, followers in tow. Leo picks up the crushed fabric, smooths it as best he can, the damage visible but not devastating, much like the threats just delivered. The preview performance begins. The auditorium filled with students and faculty, lights dimming, as Miss Castro introduces the program. No mention of Stallone, who sits in the back row. William performs flawlessly, technical perfection in every movement. The audience applauding enthusiastically, Miss Castro beaming with pride. Other dancers follow each piece, building toward the finale. The energy in the room, electric with anticipation and competition. Backstage, Leo prepares, stretching, breathing. Centering himself when he notices his music file is missing from the playlist. He rushes to find the tech operator, who shrugs apologetically, says there was a last-minute change approved by Miss Castro. Leo searches for Stallone, but can't find him anywhere. The backstage area, a maze of movement, as the penultimate piece concludes. Miss Castro steps onto the stage, microphone in hand, her voice carrying through the auditorium. Due to technical difficulties, our final piece has been cancelled. The audience murmurs in confusion, programs rustling as they check the listing while backstage Leo stands frozen, the culmination of his work stolen in an instant. Before Miss Castro can continue, William appears at her side, whispers something in her ear. A solution to the manufactured problem. She nods, smiles, announces a special edition, William performing a classical piece to conclude the evening on a professional note. Leo watches from the wings. As William takes center stage, bathed in spotlight, the audience already applauding his presence. The music begins, William's body moving with practiced grace, everything perfect, polished, and utterly soulless. Leo feels a presence beside him, turns to find Henry, the janitor's eyes fixed on the stage, his expression grim. He signs quickly to Leo. This isn't over. Stallone had to take a call. He's coming back, but it's too late. Williams' performance concludes. The audience rises in standing ovation, Miss Castro triumphant as she joins him on stage. She takes the microphone. Again, thanks everyone for coming. Begins making announcements about ticket sales for the main showcase 2 weeks away. Leo turns away, can't bear to watch anymore, begins walking toward the exit when the auditorium doors burst open. Stallone strides down the center aisle, his face thunderous voice cutting through the applause. We seem to be missing the finale. The room falls silent, all eyes turning toward him, Miss Castro's smile faltering as she tries to explain the technical difficulties. Stallone doesn't slow his pace, doesn't acknowledge her excuses. Instead walks directly to the edge of the stage, where Leo stands half hidden in shadow. He extends his hand, a silent invitation, a public acknowledgement, a chance to reclaim the moment. What do you do when humiliation looms, when all eyes watch for your failure, when the stage becomes a battlefield? Leo stares at Stallone's outstretched hand, the auditorium silent. Every eye fixed on this unexpected moment, time suspended between heartbeats. He steps forward, takes Stallone's hand, feels himself pulled into the spotlight, away from the shadows where others would keep him. Stallone turns to the tech booth, his voice commanding, no music, just lights. Center spot only. Miss Castro attempts to intervene, steps forward with practiced authority, but Stallone silences her with a look that speaks volumes about power shifting. Leo takes position at center stage, the spotlight creating a perfect circle. Around him, his shadow stretching behind like another dancer moving in silent partnership. He closes his eyes, breathes deeply, centers himself in the silence that has always been his world, then begins. His body speaks what words cannot, each movement precise yet fluid, technical skill in service to emotion, the language of exclusion translated into art. The audience watches, at first confused, then gradually captivated by the raw honesty before them. Leo's dance tells the story of isolation, of barriers, of fighting to be seen. Halfway through, Stallone walks to the piano, removes something from his pocket, places it on the polished surface where everyone can see. The hearing aid, small but unmistakable, catching the stage lights, a tiny beacon of truth. Then Stallone does something unexpected. His hands rise, begin forming shapes in the air, signing along with Leo's movements. The message clear to those who understand, invisible to those who don't, a parallel communication, adding layers to Leo's performance. Miss Castro's expression shifts from annoyance to shock. Williams stares in disbelief as Stallone's hands continue their fluid movement, telling his own story alongside Leo's. When Leo concludes his piece, the auditorium remains silent, not because they didn't appreciate it, but because something profound has occurred. Stallone steps to center stage, stands beside Leo, and begins to speak and sign simultaneously. This is what dance should be. Truth in movement. He continues, his voice steady, his hands graceful as he reveals what he's hidden for decades. I lost my hearing at 12 years old, trained at this very academy, was told my career was over before it had truly begun. The audience stirs, whispers spreading like ripples, faculty members exchanging glances, some nodding as if confirming long-held suspicions. Miss Castro stands motionless, her face a mask of complicated emotions, as Stallone continues unfolding the history she helped conceal. I was given a choice: hide who I was and continue dancing, or be honest and lose everything I chose wrong. He turns to Leo, switches to signing only, the hearing audience now excluded from this private moment made public. You chose differently, refused. To hide even when it cost you opportunities that takes more courage than I ever had. Leo responds in kind. his hands forming words that only some can understand, a conversation within a performance. It's never too late to make a different choice. Stallone nods, turns back to the audience, resumes speaking aloud. The spring showcase will feature Leo's piece as the finale. William steps forward, unable to contain himself, voice sharp with accusation. This is ridiculous. Special treatment because you feel guilty. Stallone regards him coolly, the hearing aid still visible on the piano, a physical reminder of the truth, now impossible to ignore. This isn't about guilt, it's about recognizing authentic talent, about creating art that matters instead of technically perfect emptiness. Miss Castro finally finds her voice, moves to William's side. Her loyalty made explicit in this moment of public reckoning. Stallone has overstepped his authority. The showcase program was already approved. We can't change everything because of... She hesitates, unable to say the words. Because of what? Stallone challenges. Because a deaf dancer deserves the spotlight? Or because you're afraid of what that means for your legacy? The confrontation hangs in the air. Years of institutional discrimination suddenly exposed. The comfortable narrative disrupted. Henry appears from backstage, walks calmly to center, sets down the photo album, opens it to the page with young Stallone, evidence made tangible, history reclaimed. The janitor who witnessed everything, finally stepping into the light. Henry signs to the audience. I've worked here 30 years, watching history repeat itself, talented dancers pushed aside because they didn't fit someone's idea of perfect. Stallone translates Henry's signs, their voices unified, as years of silence end in one cathartic moment of truth. Miss Castro looks at the open album, at the photos she must remember taking, at the young dancers she once taught before prestige became more important than possibility. Her shoulders drop slightly, the first sign of something shifting, not surrender but recognition of a truth too long ignored. The auditorium remains silent, witnesses to a revelation that transcends one dancer's moment to question the very foundations of their art. Leo stands tall at center stage, no longer an understudy, no longer relegated to the margins, his presence undeniable. What happens when secrets surface, when hidden histories emerge, when those who were silenced finally find their voice? Morning. Light filters through studio windows, 1 week after the revelation. The Academy halls buzzing with whispers, everything changed, yet daily routines continuing. Leo arrives for rehearsal, no longer needing to come hours early, no longer practicing in shadows. His place in the showcase secured. The other dancers regard him differently now, not with sudden acceptance. That would be too simple, too neat, but with complicated reassessment. Miss Castro has stepped back from the showcase, citing personal reasons, but everyone knows the truth, her authority undermined by her own choices. Stallone has taken full control, reshaping the program, not centering Leo, but ensuring every voice has space. William still dances the lead in the main piece, his talent undeniable, his attitude subdued, the public confrontation having cracked his armor. During water break, he approaches Leo not with friendship, but with grudging acknowledgement. You've been counting different beats than me for that transition in the second movement. Show me how you're timing it. I can't get it right. A small moment, not an apology, not even kindness, but recognition of Leo's expertise. Mila joins them, has been watching from the sidelines, moves between them like a translator. Though no translation is needed, the three of them work through the sequence, bodies communicating what words cannot, finding common ground in the language of dance, building something new from conflict. Henry appears in the doorway, no longer pretending to clean, invited by Stallone to observe his knowledge of the Academy's history now valued. During afternoon rehearsal, unexpected visitors arrive, representatives from the National Dance Association invited by Stallone without the board's approval. They watch the dancers, take notes, speak quietly with Stallone, their presence signaling institutional attention. After they leave, Stallone gathers. Everyone announces a new initiative that sends ripples through the studio. The NDA is establishing a scholarship for dancers with disabilities, named after Henry Hayes, the silent witness who preserved the truth. Henry's eyes widen in surprise, his hands moving rapidly in protest. This isn't what he wanted. His role was never meant to be public. But Stallone continues. The first recipient has already been chosen, a 13-year-old deaf dancer from the Bronx who will join the academy next fall. The future arrives so quickly, change cascading once it begins. What seemed impossible weeks ago, now established fact. That evening, as dancers file out exhausted but exhilarated, Leo notices workers in the main hallway. They're installing a new display, case larger than the old trophy cabinet, with space for photographs, stories, and a small hearing aid preserved under glass. The plaque reads, "Different Voices, One Dance, Celebrating Diversity in Movement, Westlake Academy's Hidden Legacy Revealed." Leo watches silently as Stallone supervises the installation. The legacy object now, public denial no longer possible. Stallone catches Leo watching, walks over to join him, stands shoulder to shoulder, both reflected in the glass case. "I hid for so long I almost forgot who I was. What made my dancing different? What made it true?" Leo nods, understanding, signs back. "We dance differently because we experience differently. That's not weakness, it's perspective." Stallone smiles. For the first time since arriving, a genuine expression, the mask finally set aside. The main showcase looms 3 days away, tickets sold out within hours of the preview, the controversy having sparked interest beyond the Academy's usual audience. William passes them in the hallway, pauses briefly, nods to Leo without speaking, a small acknowledgement where none existed before. Miss Castro has submitted her resignation, effective after the showcase. Her note citing changing times and the need for new perspectives, words that acknowledge without apologizing, her part in maintaining barriers, now finally breaking down. At home that night, Leo finds his mother waiting up a letter in her hand from the National Dance Association. They've invited him to speak at their annual conference about his experience as a deaf dancer, his voice suddenly valuable where once it was ignored. She signs excitedly, pride evident in every movement. "This is what we've waited for. This is what you've earned." Leo studies the invitation, feels the weight of responsibility, of being asked to represent, when he's still finding his own way. The next day, final dress rehearsal. The theater humming with anticipation as technical elements come together. Leo's solo piece now concludes the program, followed by a brief presentation where Stallone will officially announce the scholarship and new initiatives. William performs flawlessly, his technical precision now paired with something new, a vulnerability, previously absent, as if Leo's truth gave him permission for his own. Backstage, dancers from different factions now mingle, united by the shared experience of being part of something historic. Mila finds Leo in a quiet corner, stretching before his piece, her expression thoughtful as she chooses her words carefully. "I never understood before what it must be like to love something so much that doesn't love you back." Leo pauses, considers her words, then signs, "Dance always loved me back. People didn't." She nods, understanding the distinction, then offers something unexpected. "I've been learning signs to understand your perspective better." She demonstrates some basic phrases, imperfect but sincere, her effort more meaningful than perfect execution. When the rehearsal concludes, the dancers gather on stage. no longer divided into leads and understudies, but a company unified by shared purpose. Stallone addresses them, not as the famous choreographer, but as someone who's walked their path, who understands their struggles and dreams. Tomorrow everything changes, not just for this academy, but for dance itself, because you had the courage to change. That night, Leo stands on the empty stage, the theatre quiet around him, feeling the space that will soon be filled with witnesses. Henry joins him, companionable silence between them, until the older man signs, "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Leo considers the question, the many layers it contains, then responds honestly, "Not for the dancing, for what comes after." Henry nods understanding, takes something from his pocket, places it in Leo's hand, a faded ribbon from a competition 30 years past. "I kept this all these years. Stallone gave it to me the day he decided to hide who he was, to remind me what was lost." Leo studies the ribbon, its colors dulled by time, the embossed letters still legible. Most innovative choreography, it belongs to you now, Henry signs, not because you're like him, but because you chose differently. The morning of the showcase, Leo wakes early, not to practice in secret, but to center himself before the storm. He visits the academy, now transformed by workers, installing ramps, visual cue systems, accessibility no longer an afterthought. The display case gleams in the morning light, photographs spanning decades, hidden history now celebrated, the narrative expanded to include all voices. Among the photographs, a new addition, Leo at the preview performance mid-movement, his expression transcendent. Beside it, a space reserved for what happens next, history still being written. What would you do if the barriers you fought against for years suddenly began to fall, and you could finally dance without restraint? The showcase night arrives, the theatre lobby buzzing with anticipation, programs passing from hand to hand, media representatives mingling with patrons. Backstage dancers prepare in charged silence, the weight of expectation, heavier than any performance before. Leo stands before the mirror, adjusting his costume. When William appears beside him, their reflections side by side, no words pass between. Them the rivalry transformed not into friendship, but something more valuable, respect. In the wings, Stallone gathers the company. No last-minute instructions, just presence and solidarity. The house lights dim, the audience settles, the curtain rises, and art begins to speak. The program unfolds, each piece building upon the last, the dancers, moving with purpose beyond technique, beyond competition. William performs his solo, technically flawless as always, but with newfound vulnerability, as if Leo's truth gave him permission for his own. From the wings, Leo watches, recognizing the transformation that comes when barriers between performers fall. Intermission passes in a blur, dancers changing costumes, checking makeup, preparing for the second half. In the lobby, the display case attracts crowds, people studying the photographs, reading the stories hidden for decades. When the lights dim again, the audience returns with heightened awareness, the context shifted by what they've learned between acts. The second half builds toward Leo's finale, each piece now viewed through new perspective. The language of movement, suddenly richer with understanding. When his moment arrives, Leo takes center stage, the spotlight creating his circle. As the theater falls completely silent, no music plays, no sounds intrude, just Leo's body telling the story that words, spoken or signed, cannot fully express. His dance speaks of isolation, of barriers encountered, of the fight to be seen, but also of transcendence. Halfway through, Stallone joins him on stage, not to overshadow, but to partner. Together, they dance master and student, past and future, different generations of the same struggle. Their movements echo each other, sometimes in unison, sometimes in counterpoint. A conversation without words. Henry watches from the wings, tears streaming, unchecked, as the secret he protected for decades transforms into celebration. When they finish, the theater remains silent. One heartbeat, two, then eruption applause, thundering the audience on their feet, a recognition beyond politeness. Leo and Stallone stand together, accepting the response, not with bows but with hands raised in the sign for thank you. Miss Castro watches from the back row, her expression unreadable until she too rises, adding her applause to the ovation. As the applause continues, Stallone steps forward, gestures for quiet, addresses the audience directly. For too long, we've defined dance by limitation, by who couldn't participate, rather than by the voices we were missing. He gestures to Leo, standing tall beside him. No longer an understudy, but the future embodied. Tonight marks a beginning, not just for this academy, but for how we understand art itself as a language that transcends all barriers. He reveals the scholarship, the new initiatives, the partnerships with organizations supporting dancers with disabilities. The audience applauds again, but differently now. Not just appreciation for performance, but endorsement of transformation. As the evening concludes, dancers take their final bows, no longer divided into factions, but united in something larger than themselves. In the lobby, patrons cluster around Leo reporters, request interviews. Fellow dancers from other companies introduce themselves. One small girl approaches, maybe 7 years old, hearing aids visible behind both ears, her hands forming careful signs. You danced, how my heart feels. Leo kneels to her level, signs back with gentle hands, sees his younger self in her eyes, the circle continuing. Later that night, after the crowds disperse, after the flowers and congratulations, Leo returns to the empty stage. The ghost light casts a single pool of illumination as he sits at the edge, feet dangling into darkness, feeling the vibrations of memory in the wooden floor. Henry finds him there, sits beside him in companionable silence until Leo signs, "What happens now?" Henry smiles, his hands forming words of wisdom. Now, you dance your own dance and help others find theirs. 6 months later, the academy looks different. Ramps where once were only stairs, visual cue systems alongside audio ones. The fall semester begins, new students arriving, including a 13-year-old deaf dancer from the Bronx, the first scholarship recipient. Leo works as assistant teacher while continuing his own training, his path unfolding before him in ways he never imagined possible. William has joined a professional company, his talent taking him to new stages, but he returns occasionally to demonstrate that change continues beyond these walls. Stallone divides his time between professional commitments and the academy he once fled, now reclaimed as part of his legacy. The display case has expanded, now a full exhibit in the main hall, Different Voices, One Dance, Westlake's most popular attraction, Miss Castro's replacement. A former dancer with partial hearing loss brings new perspective to the academy, building bridges where once were only walls. On quiet mornings before classes begin, Leo sometimes finds Henry in the old practice room, working with new students who dance in silence. The janitor's closet now bears a nameplate, Henry Hayes, accessibility coordinator. His decades of silent witness transformed into active guidance. And sometimes, when the studio is empty, Leo dances alone. Not because he must hide, but because some conversations with oneself are sacred. What would you do if someone told you your dreams were impossible? Would you believe them, or would you change? The definition of possible. Leo Griffin changed one academy, which changed one discipline, which opened one door that can never be closed again. Because once truth speaks, in whatever language it chooses those who hear it, with ears or eyes or bodies, can never unhear its power. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe.